absolutely joyful to be with you today. I'm going to talk today a little bit about things I learned when I was a young girl. Now, when I've talked a little bit about my mom, and my mom was so good at so many things, but sometimes when she taught me to do something, I didn't get the whole picture. So I can remember being taught to can food. So that's when you, for those of you who don't know, that's when you take food and you put it into a jar and then pressure can it so that it will sit on your shelf for a long time. So mom would find a cherry tree that somebody had that the cherries would drop all over, and they'd say, sure, you can come pick cherries. And so we'd all go pick cherries every year and then come home and we'd sit there and we'd pit the cherries, and then mom would can them. And then she would find the berry farms and we would go and we'd pick the berries and pay for the berries by the pound, and then come home and we would wash the berries and mom would can them. And then she would find pear trees, and oh my goodness, pears took forever because peeling the pears took a long time and cleaning the insides out, and mom would can them. So when I became an adult, I knew those were all really good things to do, but I didn't know the whole process. And so it took me a really long time to get brave to try it myself. And now I love it. I love doing that. But I thought that was interesting that I didn't learn the whole process. I was in charge of cooking every Wednesday night, and when I was a teenager-ish. And I remember making homemade macaroni and cheese every Wednesday night. So not that I learned to cook, I just learned how to make macaroni and cheese from scratch really well. But I really had to do some learning once I got married of how to cook. I can remember mom making bread from scratch. Mom would make the most amazing bread, even grind her wheat and into wheat flour and make this most amazing bread. But all I can remember is a glass measuring cup sitting on the counter with some foamy, really scary stuff in it. I'd even had nightmares about growing bread that was growing or yeast that was growing. And it took me a really long time to try making my own bread. My mother-in-law and father-in-law gave us a big container of wheat and a wheat grinder for a wedding gift. And oh my goodness, I never touched it, didn't do anything with it. It was years, like 3 or 4 years later, that we moved to Texas. Hot, hot, hot. That container of wheat, big plastic container of wheat, stayed out in the garage. I was scared to open it. I was scared to open it. And I can remember when I finally got brave to try it. And I just knew when I opened that container, it was gonna just be bugs crawling out of it. And it was perfectly fine. Wheat lasts forever. That's why the Egyptians put it, and I don't know, in the pyramids, I don't know where they put it, but they had lots of wheat and it lasted 30, 50, 100 years. It's just amazing. So now I love having wheat on hand, and I grind my wheat and I make my bread. But it just took a really long time to not get scared of yeast. I remember it was my sister-in-law, Kelly, that taught me a recipe that with the yeast that made me feel comfortable, and just bit by bit, trying new things and getting comfortable with them, and then hopefully sharing them and passing them on to our kids, which I haven't been really great at either. We just kind of keep learning about those things. My mom was a quilter, always has been a quilter. She's 89, she's still a quilter. She is the epitome of don't sit and watch TV unless you're doing something with your hands. So mom always had a quilt on. She would give them away for wedding gifts and baby gifts, and we were tying them, not quilting, not teeny tiny stitches for those of you that are quilters. I learned to do that later in life, but this was tie quilting with yarn, tie a knot, yarn, tie a knot. And it was great because we got to watch Little House on the Prairie and Waltons, and that was the way that we got to watch TV. But I never knew how to set up the quilt before the tying, and I never knew how to take it down and bind the edges. Had to learn and figure that out too as an adult. And I did a little bit better teaching some of my daughters that wanted to learn how to do, but oh my goodness, it is so fun. And the coolest thing, I ran into a friend recently who was my friend in high school, and she said, I went over to your house once and you taught me how to tie a quilt. And she said, I've been tying quilts my whole life and taught my daughters and been doing that. And it just made me feel so good. Well, somehow she figured it out too, all of it, beyond just tying. And it just made me happy. So it's just really fun to have learned how to try things and do things and bring my comfortableness with when I didn't know the whole process. And so when I learned how to cook a little bit, not a lot, I'm still not a great cook. And so I just had this big family and I had to feed them. So I figured out how to do freezer food cooking. And that's a long story, but it is, maybe I'll do a post on it sometime with more details, but it is amazing how that saved me. Because I didn't like to cook and I didn't like to be in the kitchen, I figured out how to put a meal together, usually cook the meat, put the meal together, put it in the freezer, not cook it first, put it in the freezer, then you pull it out on the day you want it and it defrosts and you bake it. So it's as if you just put it together and you bake it and it tastes fantastic. So I got that all figured out. But by doing that, and yeah, those of you who know me know my bulk mentality, I figured out how to do it for a week and just concentrate and fill 2.5 freezers, and then I didn't have to cook for a year. I know I'm a nut. So what I accomplished was giving us more time as a family in the afternoons. We didn't make a big mess. I saved money. I mean, there's a lot of positives, but I didn't teach my children how to cook very well because they weren't home when I was busy trying to cook that week, and the meals just appeared. So in the summertime with my last few girls, I did better at having them pick out a couple of my freezer recipes, and I would teach them to always make 2 of something so we could enjoy it for dinner that night and then put the other one in the freezer. And then it was so great to pull it out and say, hey, we're having Rose's chicken pot pie today. And so I did do a little bit better teaching the last few girls how to cook. But you know, it's so funny, the things that we figure out for us and things to make us survive and thrive and make it in our families may not be the way to teach our children everything they need to know. So I'm not saying fix it, teach them everything. I'm just saying keep those things in mind. As you're teaching a process to your children, teach them the whole thing, because those wonderful things I learned as a girl, I would have loved to know the whole picture and been a little bit more comfortable with it as I became an adult. So I hope that you've enjoyed this message today. I know that sometimes I share so many details that it sounds crazy. I don't share them to make anybody feel like they have to do all these things. I share them just to prick thoughts, just to help you decide, I might want to work on that, or hey, I think I need to improve a little bit there, or you know what, I do that and I don't want to do that anymore. Whatever. It's just to make absolutely joyful thoughts hopefully come to your mind of what you can do to improve, feel better about yourself, and move forward. Have a wonderful day. Find ways to be absolutely joyful.